Excellent. Mark, how are you?
Good, good. Pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure for me as well. I've been really enjoying your work that I've come across via your own channels. Instagram's very active. Some lovely stuff up on YouTube that I've been enjoying. And you've made some wonderful appearances on Miracle Voices as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I was wondering whether they were going to change it to Mark Anthony Voices at one point because you've frequented it quite a few times.
Well, I don't know if I've done that many episodes.
I'll suggest it to Matt on your behalf.
There you go. There you go. Let him know you want me back.
That's it, yeah. And obviously, when you're not presiding over the Roman Empire with this wonderful name, courtesy of your mum, we've got all these beautiful projects on the go. We've got Living the Course, Awaken to Miraculous Love. I was wondering if you could tell us about the program for helping women. Um, Maybe start with that if you're happy to elaborate on that, because I like the sound.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it focuses on women. I mean, I would help anyone. Really, the key of this program is in the Course in Miracles, which
Mm.
is helping people move from what the Course calls special love to holy love. Special love is anything that has expectation. Special love really without taking a quick deep by taking a quick deep dive with you is anchored in hate, anchored in separation. It appears like you are my chosen one, but underneath you are my chosen one is, and if you do this, I'll kill you. So that's not what love is. So the path of healing, one of the great paths of healing that becomes available to us through the course is moving from special love, broken love, fragmented love to holy love. And of course, the shift is within ourselves, within our mind, perceiving the other as whole and innocent, and even to the point where our loving them is anchored in so much freedom, so much acceptance that if they walked in the room and said, I need to leave you, then we celebrate that because they're going for their happiness and we support them. And I mean, that sounds crazy, but that's not crazy in holy love. So there's so many women, particularly because I'm a gay man and I have so many girlfriends, and I could also point to my mother's issue and her
Yeah.
relationship with my dad and
Yeah.
my own healing around love relationships.
Mm.
It just really was the impetus for me to say, let's do something here. Let's not just make special love, holy love theories. Let's actually practice them and live them.
Mm.
And so I just created a 10-week program. Sometimes I do it with a group of people, but I also offer it one-on-one, where I just help people move through steps that
Mm.
help them see their part, line up with the Holy Spirit or whatever name they give it, really do the deep work of forgiveness so that they experience a transformation. And I love it. I love the work. I love working with women. I think they're the leading force of our awakening.
Wow, they certainly are. Also, I was noticing like in some of my notes that um, you're very candid, which is great. It's something that I share in, telling my story. It's like if I read out what I've written here, because I think it's very purposive and it it will get to the point of what I would try and sort of express otherwise. Is like what I've got written here based on reading and listening to yourself is, isn't it interesting that the intensity of the grip on our unhealed perception of our separate self is completely determined by how tightly we hold on to the memory of our personal story,
Mhm.
and how counterintuitive to the ego that voicing and speaking aloud about that which we'd worked tirelessly to keep hidden from ourselves and others is where the peace lies.
Yeah, yeah. Those
And
are
it,
your words, right?
yeah,
Yeah, because they're beautiful.
yeah.
Like I didn't say it that well.
You said it to inspire that, and it's something that's cropped up for me, and it's something that I heard universally in the way that you share really openly and honestly, like myself, where I've had very close friends of mine who've listened to, say, my miracle voices or something I've done. They've gone, dude, you shared so much. And I'm like, well, yeah, what did you want? Because that's the trick, isn't it? And it's like we shroud these things, and we have a history that makes us feel shame and rejection and things to hide in that darkened space. And then really the fear is like, wee, I've got a platform.
Yep.
And it's not until we shine the light in there and say to ourselves, there isn't an aspect of our mind, there isn't a spot that we can't look at, because to leave it unfocused upon is where all of the potential depth to the fears can sort of thrive, really, can't they?
Yeah, I just did a workshop that will be packaged and available on my website soon about the 12 steps and A Course in Miracles, which I think are the two brilliant downloads of spiritual healing in the 20th century, like just absolutely brilliant. And there's a lot of overlap. And that was the purpose of my workshop, is to help people see that, because there are a lot of people who are in 12-step recovery who also are in a deep spiritual inquiry and A Course in Miracles.
Mm.
And the 12 steps say we are only as sick as our secrets. A
Wow.
Course in Miracles says, until you bring every single secret and withhold none from the Holy Spirit, until then, you will not really experience your full freedom. So they're both literally saying the same thing. We must find the courage to be authentic, to tell our deepest truth, and to find those fear pockets where we're so afraid to tell the truth, and then love and love and love and love and love and get support and do everything you have to do where you can crack that door open and let even one brother or sister see in behind that door, and then
Wow.
healing becomes possible.
That's beautiful, because I noticed in my I noticed in the next lot of notes I'd put down, the peace is in telling your story, so it no longer defines you in secret. And then now it reinforces your qualifications to talk about overcoming obstacles.
Mm, mm,
I've got
yeah.
a very dear friend of mine, and I knew him during the transitional phase of like keeping everything quiet, because my dad was involved in drug dealing and drug taking, so I was indoctrinated from maybe 5 years old to like keep all of this stuff under wraps, and the police were our enemy and blah blah blah. So I had like a sense of all of this stuff that I wasn't allowed to talk about. Plus, also, there's a feeling of guilt by association. So if I told people that my dad was like this, then they would judge me. Stuff from a child's mind that remained in my thinking, which I had to bypass and understand. And there's a really beautiful friend of mine who I know, and I knew him during these two phases. And I remember the day when I'd say like I'd known him for a year or two. And then one day I told him some of the stuff from my past, because obviously I then felt comfortable enough to share the secrets. And he just looked at me and he just went, you know what? He goes, I love you even more now you've told me that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was so affirming, because that there was the proof. It was like, I'm not going to be judged and held guilt, thought of as being guilty because of my connection to my dad. And by sharing the secrets, it actually showed my qualification that I've navigated these things and shaken off the trauma, so that I can contribute to helping other people with the journey that they're on as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That is the key. And I too, like you said, I find that same response, that people feel safer, they feel more seen, they feel like they can breathe more
Mm,
deeply
mm,
around me when I'm authentic, and that's all I want, is for them to be able to do that, and simultaneously I see that in everyone else. So why wouldn't that be true for us? When someone tells me their truth, I feel like, oh, thank you. Thank you. So, if that's true on how I perceive people, perhaps I can let that gift be given to me also. where people could get to love and know me more fully. So it's a beautiful thing.
Very interesting that you should present it as well that way round, because that's probably the truth of the situation for a lot of us, isn't it? It's like we allow it for ourselves after we've given it. And really, you wouldn't be surprised if it was kind of commonplace for it to be the other way around, people being very guarded.
Yeah.
Particularly beautiful, I think. So, in A Course in Miracles, where we know that God didn't separate from us and we separated from God, I'm just wondering, how do you use this radical viewpoint to help people shed the shackles of the historical or mainstream interpretation of how this world appears to have begun? So, as somebody who helps quite a lot of people, I imagine you come up against people who are still carrying the model of traditional Christianity or Catholicism or whatnot, and they're quite antiquated, aren't they? And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first thing I do is, to the best of my ability, and I fail at this at times, is to know that everyone really is on their perfect path. And it's never my job to even speak that there's something wrong over there.
mm,
Now, that also creates an opening for those who are ready to change and awaken. Those are the ones that I welcome to find me so we can do the work together. So I always have to, in my mind, discern, like, everyone's perfect, and if someone needs any help or assistance, they'll find me. Like, that's just my way of doing it, because I wasn't appointed to walk through the world pointing out everyone's problems, although I did that for quite some time. I know that that's not my job, so sometimes I want to pick up a job. That's number one. But number two, and this is really the key, this is where people just struggle at getting it, and they think they get it, but they still haven't gotten it, is this separation is only occurring in the mind.
mm,
It's just a thought. And if we bring that idea down into the body, which is what we believe we are, and down into this world, which we still are convinced is real, this is where it gets real dicey. Separated from God, and God, like it's not in the out picturing, in
mm,
the dream, where we will find the real core and the solution. We've got to go up into the mind. I have a thought, a belief that I'm separate from God. And from that thought and that belief, a whole other world and experience unfolds. Now, that's why if we get out of form and we get into the mind, this is where people can start to comprehend, oh, so in the mind, there is pure power of love. In your being, there's only God, and you are part of that. Now, your problem is just a little tiny thought,
mm.
a little tiny thought that you're separate, that actually, let's get crazier, my friend, was healed the moment it occurred.
Yeah.
And the only thing happening is we are continuing to recycle it.
Mm,
We are continuing to bring that which has already been healed
mm.
into experience by our attention. So now the course can do what it's meant to do, which is simply mind training.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of the course, to bring our mind to peace. A peaceful mind is open to God. That's it. And that takes some work, because it's like we get them up into the mind, and then the ego pulls us right back down into the body.
Sure.
Yeah. Is that
And
helpful? I don't know if that answer was
yeah,
useful.
that's fantastic. I love that. So I'm thinking of like an experience I had a little while ago where just to blow the cobwebs off, my wife and I probably 2 or 3 times a year turn the music up loud in our studio in the garden and spend the whole night just dancing, and we have a couple of drinks and just really sense that kind of like, oh great, you know um blow out the cobwebs kind of thing. And one of the nights was particularly colored by something that you said, and that's really stuck with me, and it's all that's ever happening is that light is dancing with light.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we literally spent the night light dancing with light, and it was so appropriate and so sort of on point. Um, and things about the freedom of A Course in Miracles in terms of, God, it's hard to pinpoint in a sense. To try and limit the freedom is kind of like going against it, but a lot of the peace that I'm cultivating as a consequence of my study of A Course in Miracles is growing all the time, day by day, week by week. And it's an equation which is governed by our input, isn't it? So I think those two words, self-study, are very purposeful in the description of this spiritual system,
Yeah.
and that the mind has its own program, which is covered over by this secondary program that we've kind of inputted, of believing in the, ultimately at the root, the separation, and then all the different ways that that manifests itself as fear thoughts. And that's become like a predominant kind of program for many, many people, to the point where they couldn't possibly imagine that behind this secondary program we've inputted is the true program that's running. Thankfully, it hasn't stopped running, otherwise we would be in a terrible scenario. But people's identity is so entwined within listening to that programming that the notion of them letting go of that identity is equally terrifying, isn't it? It's like the ego's got a double grip.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very well said. I like the word of secondary programming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in terms of how do you try and help people negotiate this? Well, you can almost say like a dual aspect to their identity, couldn't you? To
Yeah.
show them how to gently withdraw investment in the fear voice, and then to start to connect with the true presence of who we are underneath.
Well, there's two ways that a good question. There's two ideas that come to mind. And I want to, the how to I'll get to, but may I unpack the light dancing with light for a minute, a
Oh yeah,
little,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to leave that just like a thought, because that was not just oh, that's a cute little idea. It wasn't a cute idea. It was a healing revelation
Wow.
that transformed my entire being. It was a gift from the universe where I wasn't just nice words. I was working on healing from sexual abuse
Mm-hmm.
as a child and doing lots of forgiveness work and lots of prayer and therapy and 12-step work, and so much was going into my recovery and my healing process. And inside of that was a miracle moment where, in a close, I had been triggered by the abuse. I was on a plane flying home from where I was, and it doesn't matter where. And the whole memory was triggered in me yet again. And I remember like putting my sunglasses on. I was on a window seat and I turned to the window because tears were coming down my face. I was
Sure.
like, God, please, please, please let this be forgiven. And that's when I was really given a true miracle,
Mm-hmm.
where I was like, I felt like God took my head and pulled me back and said, see this as I see this. And the story of the abuse that had run in my head 1,000 times, seeing it and feeling it and crying about it and feeling the pain of it, suddenly I was taken out of it and I was shown from God. And that's where the story, the whole abuse story, peeled off, and it was light dancing with light. So it's important that I kind of give the context
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
for that saying, because it literally healed me in an instant. The
Wow.
holy instant. The miracle was given, and I was forever changed. More ripples of healing happened over the upcoming years, but they come from that revelation of truth that I was so blessed to see kind of behind the curtain, if you will. I was literally shown. And by the way, the story was put into like this ball. It felt like it was just thrown out into the universe. And I was told it will never harm me again. And it will only be used for teaching purposes like this now. And that has been my truth. From that moment, I can't feel the story. It doesn't seem real. It like I can have a shadow, like, I mean, it sort of happened, but did it happen? You know what I mean? It gets very confusing in the most positive way. So I want for everyone their own revelation of seeing light dancing with light, whatever that means. Every one of us has within us that moment where we see the truth that sets us free. And so that lives in me. And more I practice living from that. Now, because I was shown that at such a personal and in-depth level, that gives me an authority, not an ego-based authority, but an authority to say those words to someone else with certainty.
Like a qualification.
A qualification. This is important. And because I taught for many years speaking the words, but not living them.
Yeah.
That's just part of our process of
Yeah.
becoming.
Yeah.
But so that's how I can help people. I'm not seduced by other people's stories. And the reality is, we're still susceptible to that.
Sure.
Every single unhealed part in you, if you will, if I may say it that way, that is still waiting its miracle, those parts are going to block you from really being able to be helpful. Now, what's going to happen is they're going to draw to you their matching components. So if you think you're unworthy, if you still have a belief of unworthiness to be healed, you're going to be drawing to you unworthy people, unworthy experiences, because it's wanting you to see it and heal it. So that's the process that it works. But then when it is healed, then you draw people who believe they're unworthy for their healing. They first become a gift to you because they're pointing you to your freedom. You find your freedom, and your freedom becomes a gift that you begin to give. That's what we're called. That's a teacher of God. That's what we're called to do. And we must be humble. We must be humble and ask the Holy Spirit, purify my mind of every false belief and story and separating idea so that I can extend my hand and lovingly and joyously help another. There was another part of it, but I knew I would lose it.
It's amazing how great that, I'd obviously knew some of the backstory of what you've again, really kindly and candidly shared. But how amazing that 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 sort of encapsulates the experience for you,
Yeah.
and that stuck with me. So in a sense, it adds more weight to the success of it, really, because you've shared more about that phrase. That phrase just went in my head, and it stayed with me, and it still stays with me. It hasn't faded from my awareness, but that one particular night must have been not long after I'd heard it, and it was just so on point and articulate for our evening. We'd had quite a lot to get through. There'd been all these different ups and downs, and we were just having a lovely, simple experience of just dancing to music, chatting and laughing, stepping outside, looking at the stars, coming back in, having a laugh. And that sort of sentence was almost like the strap line for the evening, and yet there's so much reason why now.
Well, and that's what's always happening. Like, you
Yeah,
had a taste of it in physical experience,
yeah,
but when you're there, even if you're sitting in the corner of your room in depression, crying your eyes out,
yeah,
your spirit's just dancing in the sun and the moonlight.
yeah. And I think that was the physical enactment of this statement was kind of like quite secondary. It was that it had really, really hit home in that, I could see the absolute power and the truth of that statement.
Yeah.
As
Thank
I,
you. You're helping me bring it even deeper because it's like for anyone listening, like just try, like whatever issue is appearing, whatever suffering is appearing, be it financial, be it relational, be it physical health and well-being, whatever story has got a hold of you, and for real, like it's your experience. Just pray, Holy Spirit, show me the light dancing with light that's behind this.
Mm.
Show me the truth of light dancing with light behind this story. And that, I'm telling you, one taste of that, and, you'll be good. You'll be on your way.
Oh, I totally understood the truth of that night. Like I said,
Yeah,
the
that's so
actual
nice.
the connection of it being an appropriate description for the two of us having a dance and coming from a place of light was, like I say, it was like a side issue. It was just like, everything is done. All that's ever happening is, it's just firework display.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. So how would you guide people to direct their prayers from a Course in Miracles point of view? It comes up a few times of like,
Does. It's interesting. And it
hmm,
depends on the definition of prayer.
mm-hmm,
Um, well, is that correct? Maybe like I gotta pull that back for a
yeah,
minute.
yeah, yeah.
Prayer is one of the I find is one of the controversial things that gets triggered from
Mm-hmm,
Course in Miracles, because the Course says at a certain point, the only real prayer is prayer for forgiveness. That's all you ever need to do. And there's lots of times where the Course is asking us to take our attention off of wanting things, to take our attention off of wanting in this world, and turn that wanting and that desire to bring us home to heaven. So that is the purest uh, idea
mm-hmm,
of prayer. So, like, we could just say the highest holy prayer. If you really want the fast track and you really are dedicated to heaven, then pray for forgiveness, pray for forgiveness, pray for forgiveness, and speak no other prayer. Every situation you find yourself in where there appears to be another, pray for forgiveness, because it's in your mind where it's appearing. That we can check that box. You want that one, take it, and ride no other, but judge no other.
yeah.
And this is the key, because people tend to point to that one and then spend their time judging the other. And I'm like, you're only halfway there, my friend. So this is where the path gets narrow, and
Yeah.
it's allowing of us, because now I'll go to what I know and believe is that all prayer is simply asking for good.
Mm,
All prayer is only asking that something be healed and something be revealed. And if the best the person can do in their consciousness, in their current understanding, is to pray for a car because they want a car and they have a belief that that car will make them happy,
mhm,
why would I deny someone that? Who am I to decide that God's not going to use, or the Holy Spirit is not going to use that? The Holy Spirit will use that. If the Holy Spirit, if their prayer life brings to them a car that they previously couldn't believe they could afford or even comprehend acquiring, and yet here they sit with a car, they have just
yeah.
broken through the lie of lack. They have just proven, even in a little way, that the laws of this universe are in them and can work for them.
Mm,
The car is training wheels,
mm,
because they'll discover that the car is not their ultimate happiness.
mm.
Fine, let them have that experience. I've done it. I bought plenty of cars to prove that they will never really be my ultimate happiness. And I wouldn't take one of those away from myself. So if someone uses prayer to manifest something, I know that those are training wheels, and
No.
that those are stepping stones to a deeper experience of prayer and surrender. But for many of us, those are the training wheels that work. I mean, that's the world we're in. That's the appearance. Acquire something, get something. This is how the law of attraction works. Like, we use all of those things. Abraham Hicks is a phenomenal teacher of the law of attraction who tells us to want what you want. And there's great freedom. Your ultimate wanting will always be heaven. That is done. Your ultimate wanting will always be to return home, if you will.
Yeah.
So the way there, use prayer in a way that grows you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's really lovely. There's a theme, there's a real gentleness and an openness thematically to what you're describing, which is obviously your character, and that's wonderfully tolerant and nurturing, and
Mm,
there's like a sense of, like a non-judgmental, just an arm around someone, listening, allowing them to say what they're saying, not feeling a responsibility to change their minds or their words, but to maybe just be aware of the space they can grow into
yeah.
on their behalf, on your own behalf.
Well, and the thing that can help us all live there more is just what lives in my head is who am I to decide that that car isn't their perfect path home?
Mm.
Who am I to decide that someone putting a heroin needle in their arm isn't part of their perfect path home?
Mhm.
And none of that is mine to judge. I really believe the Holy Spirit will use everything
Yeah,
to do its job. The Holy Spirit, it does not sleep. The Holy Spirit will use absolutely every desire of yours, every wanting, every path. It's all going to be perfectly used. So I don't have to worry about it. I just love them.
that's so good.
It's easier. That's what I'm always looking for. It's just easier for me.
Amazing. Yeah, so what have I got here, which I thought was very nice as well? You've described your personal mission is to help people to heal their unconscious commitment to suffering, forgive all, and live an inspired life. And I thought that was really so beautiful. And in a sense, you've split the apple into three. It's the same apple, but quite beautifully, because an unconscious commitment to suffering is like that's that's that bit kind of articulated fully, isn't it? Then to forgive all, okay, and then to live an inspired life.
Mhm.
Gorgeous.
Good. I'm glad you like it because it truly feels like my mission.
Yeah, really, really nice. And what else have I got here? Excuse me. I suppose this has maybe been answered as well in my previous question of how would you guide somebody to direct their prayers, because I've got as a secondary, God doesn't know we're here. The idea that people have to ask him to intervene here isn't relevant as far as ACIM teaches. So I guess you have answered that for me in a sense because of the gentle way that you don't interpose, with
Okay.
somebody's.
Well, let's dive into the God doesn't know we're here.
Yeah, great.
And do you mind if I do a little bit of channeling work and I feel like this one isn't for me to answer.
Yeah, right.
So I feel a little knocking here, which is my sign. And um,
Hmm.
so let me just listen and allow this spirit to speak through me. This is an important subject. We could say that even that statement alone is why you two have been brought together. God doesn't know we're here. This is the ultimate truth, capital T, because God doesn't know fear. Love doesn't know fear. Light doesn't know darkness. These are simple examples to point to what it means. However, God does know when its children are suffering or separate in their belief system or in their way of being. God does feel a sense of my child is not home, even in the mind, not in the physical world. This is why the Holy Spirit is here. This is why it is God's voice for remembering. So if there wasn't something that knew you were living in separation, why would there even be the Holy Spirit? Why would there be the practice of forgiveness? Why would Jesus, our beloved brother, take the time to download A Course in Miracles? So something knows that their beloved child has fallen asleep. Now, that's as far as God needs to know, if you will. And so God, imagine this, God goes, my son, there's something here. Holy Spirit is created instantly to solve that problem and to do its work until all is remembered and restored and returned. So that's enough information for now to hopefully put some context and understanding around this idea. God has not abandoned you. God would never not allow you to make what you have made, which is the belief that you're separate. But God will also do everything in God's natural, inherent power and principle to help you remember. That is God. That is God.
Beautiful.
Was that helpful? I hope. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
so.
just going to let that hang in the air for a minute. Those vibrations can
Yeah.
can just
Thank you for
hang
that
in there.
question. Thank you for activating that.
That was amazing. I think that's your mic drop moment, isn't it?
Well, I think we've had a couple great moments here.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I've got quite a lot to think about there. There's some beautiful answers and a sense that I can sort of percolate, let some thoughts percolate for a continuation of the conversation, if that's
Yeah,
something.
let's do that. Let's do this more, my friend. This is enjoyable. I think Spirit has brought us together to activate something really cool, and I've deeply enjoyed it.
Oh, lovely. That's so nice. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of joy for me in listening back. And I
Mm,
think the listening back is where I'll get my inspiration for the next set of questions.
mm, beautiful.
Excellent. So thank you for part one.
Yeah, yeah, truly, truly. I'm not kidding. I look forward to part 2 and part 3. Who knows?
Excellent. Right. You have a beautiful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. An absolute pleasure to connect.
Yeah, truly. You too. You too. Have a wonderful day.
Take care now.